With the in-depth explanation that we have now received, the understanding of Shavuot, that very important holiday, the holiday when the revelation of the Torah on Mount Sinai became a reality, the revelation of the Ten Commandments. No greater historic event has ever taken place on planet Earth, nor, as the Zohar and the Talmud state, will ever again occur. It was the time when the Lord Himself presented the force directly to the nation of Israel. We are all too familiar with the aspect of holidays. They occur, and when they occur, we understand those days to be days for celebration. Unfortunately, Judaism all too long has failed to neglect the all-important cause that brought about the event in the first place. Why? Why did the revelation of the Torah take place in the Hebrew month of Sivan, the third month following Aries, Taurus, and now Sivan, which was the month of Gemini? Why in this month, above all other months? Of course, with the Kabbalistic understanding of the Omer, and with an interpenetration into what was necessary to prepare the Israelites for this momentous occasion, involved preparing a proper vessel, preparing and correcting our personal, internal mechanisms, so when the force finally came, it would not be a matter of short-circuitedness, but circuitry. It would be an ongoing, continuous flow of energy in which we, and by which we can handle, through proper channels, this awesome power that was revealed back on Passover. On Shavuot was another reenactment of that which already had occurred on Passover. But whereas on Passover the vessel was unprepared, the Israelites had done nothing in the way of spiritual growth, and unprepared as they were for this awesome power, it was forced immediately to disappear on the 16th day of Nisan. But on Shavuot, the Israelites were ready. They had been laboring for 49 days, including Lag BaOmer. Another question that we might have asked was, how come Passover and Sukkot both fall and occur on the 15th day of the Hebrew months of Aries and Libra, respectively? Because we do have, from a Kabbalistic point of view, an understanding of why the 15th day of the month. Because cosmically, the moon and the sun are on an equal basis. The moon, representing Malhut, also is full, which to us figuratively speaking, represents and displays and portrays the cosmic event that the eye cannot see but is occurring. And that is a total manifestation of cosmic energy forces. Therefore, the moon, which has no light of its own, has become fully impregnated by the sun, which symbolizes Ze'ir Anpin, has become fully impregnated with the energy force, and together represent a circuit of energy. And consequently, Passover and Sukkot occurred on that day and begins on that day because cosmically it was ready. We celebrate that day because that is the day that the Torah provided us with a timetable to understand. This is the day. Make use of a matzah as a channel. Make use of a lulav and an etrog as a channel to connect to that awesome power called the force of the Lord. Therefore, we have no need to ask why Shavuot occurred on the 6th day of the Hebrew month. Why not also on the 15th day of Sivan, the month of Gemini? The answer is rather simple. Because we needed to complete the channel that can handle this awesome power through the efforts and spiritual endeavor of the Israelites during the 49 days. And we know why 49 days, because 7 frames of reference, of which consist of 7 parts. 7. A complete unit, a complete receiver that could now handle and direct and be controlled by the Israelites when they established, at the completion of the 49 days, the completion of the 49 aspects of that total, complete, universal channel by which harmony, order, and structure in the universe was not only established, but continued to be maintained. That happened on the 6th day of Sivan. And so, it was only a natural consequence that the Torah, the 10 Commandments, 10 of course meaning the 10 Sfirot, because not only was the physical reality of the terrestrial level that we live in found itself to be completed, but it was also joined together with the upper 3 Sfirot called Keta, Chachma, and Binah, and as one unified whole, brought at that point to an end the aspect of death, Bila Hamavet Lanetzach, eternally. But why Gemini? Why Gemini? Why couldn't it still be another month? Okay, they prepared the vessel. We can say, well, why not have it as quickly as possible? But was that the answer? Because that was the day the vessel was ready. Well, why not? Why not, from a Kabbalistic point of view, is not a direct or sufficient answer. Why, yes, there's got to be something more affirmative, something more positive as to be the cause why this event, the revelation of the force of the Lord, took place during the month of Gemini. And before we can proceed to even grasp a glimpse of what this cosmic event is about, let us understand what Gemini means. Twins is the literal translation. But it also includes the word tam, complete. Complete. Gemini is an air sign. It is an air sign. Gemini, astrologically, is not only an air sign, but its position within the structure of astronomy astrology is the third month of the first group of 3 months. I feel it necessary to inject a very superficial understanding of Kabbalistic astrology in order to permit an understanding of this very, if I might say, quote, historic event. Historic only in a sense that Genesis 2, Adam, before the sin, before the fall of Adam, the power by which Adam controlled the entire universe was now going to be restored, placed in the hands of people again. This time, hopefully, to create a structured, ordered universe. We have 12 months in the year. Those 12 months actually represent the Tetragrammaton, which is 4 letters, the Yud K Vav K, and each 3 months, the first 3, which is Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, or Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, represent the Yud, the head of the Tetragrammaton. The Yud, the most powerful, the most revealing of the force. In this grouping of the Yud, which is in essence Chachma, and also gives you further insight into why did Passover, Iyar, and Gemini be considered the all-embracing channel for the all-embracing unified force, because they were at the head, they were at the top, the Yud, the beginning, the Rosh, as Exodus in chapter 12 describes the month of Aries. This is where things, once established, once properly instituted, would be then considered the seed for all subsequent events that would take place during the ensuing 9 months. The first 3 is part of one grouping, the Yud. Now, why are there three? Well, by this time, having listened to so many of the tapes, you understand that no matter what force we are to consider, we are discussing three aspects of a force. While this force may be part of an all-embracing whole, nevertheless, as a unit, it must consider itself to be part and consisting of right, left, and central. Therefore, in the first 3 months, Gemini is the third of the first grouping. Aries is right column. ER is left column, and therefore it is called the month of Ziv, the month by which the light is drawn in, no less and no different than the electric bulb that we discussed previously, in which the negative pole is actually the force, the intelligence that draws to itself the electricity. Therefore, ER is called Chodesh Ziv, and therefore those Taurus people are real stubborn people. They're almost like the Rock of Gibraltar, and rightfully so, because in essence they represent the force, and there is nothing that can stand against the force. But maybe the Torah sometimes forget he's also human, and so while he would like to make use of this cosmic Ziv, at the same time he must understand there is a termination point. You can't continue to make use of this force without some form of restriction. They must achieve a spiritual level elevation to make use of this awesome power that is theirs, but depending on its use or misuse. Tu'umim, Sivan, Gemini, is actually the third column, the third month of this grouping, important grouping of the Yud. And the reason why Gemini is called Ti'umim, meaning complete, because it, by and within itself, is the central force as a central column. It is an air sign, air meaning the force of a central column energy intelligence, which can bring together, which can reconcile plus and minus as one unified whole. So whereas there are three air signs, Gemini is the air sign of the Yud. So as to give somewhat of a more thorough understanding of the point I'm making, let us take the next grouping of months. Tammuz, July, Cancer, August, Leo, Av, and we have the final month, Virgo, Betula, August, September. Here is again another grouping falling under the heading of the first hay of the Tetragrammaton. We find no air sign there, and there is a reason. I know that conventional astrology never made an attempt to understand why, that all-important why. But suffice to say, because the first Hey is left column, is Bina, there is no air sign. But the air sign is indicative of a central column force. We then go to the next groupings of 3, which represents the Vav, and the first right column month is Libra. Libra. Here is an air sign, but with the quality of sharing. Right column. And quickly passing over to the last grouping, or the third grouping, which is Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. In the final grouping, we have Capricorn, Aquarius, the third air sign. Third air sign, but here it is the second month. Consequently, it is the left column of the air signs. With this understanding, we now can proceed to understand why Shavuot, the revelation of the Torah, the time when the force of the Lord presented itself directly for the very first time to the nations of the world. The instrument being the Israelite. He was going to handle and control this awesome power, hopefully for the good of mankind. And heaven help him or mankind in its misuse or abuse. But inasmuch as we understand that restriction is the paradox and the building block of this universe, for the force to become manifest amongst mortal human beings, there would have to be an abundance of cosmic restrictive energy, so that at the receiving and revelation of the Bible itself, the channel by which this awesome power was now revealed, there was no choice but to make certain that the Israelite and all of mankind who benefited from the giving of the Torah would have also the advantage of the paradoxical cosmic intelligence of restriction, which was the air sign. The air sign. The air sign that was air from 2 points of view. It not only was itself, in essence, an air sign, but it was also the air sign in the first grouping. It was the third month of the first grouping, not as Libra or as Aquarius, but there was a total injection into the cosmos of this kind of metaphysical astral influence, restriction. This was the pivot and focal point of handling this awesome power. Would the Israelite or humankind fail to make use of this essential building block, restriction, then havoc, chaos, and disorder was the inevitable result. And so at this point, the Israelite took upon himself a responsibility which was commensurate with what he was going to receive. Having heaven help him if he failed to exercise that building block, the paradox of restriction. So now we have an understanding of why Shavuot, why the revelation took place in the month of Gemini. We also have another explanation of why the two tablets, what did they represent? I guess it's fairly simple to all of you listening to this tape. We're talking about Aries, right column, sharing, the energy intelligence of a proton, along with Taurus, left column, the light, and the necessity of bringing these two forces together. The tablets represented Tam, Tu'umim, Gemini, the two opposing forces, the two twins. The reason they're called twins because they are both different representations, different aspects of the same thing. Plus and minus behave functionally through that internal energy force called the force. Electricity, if you might. The air sign, Gemini, brought these two together as a working, all-embracing, unified whole. The two tablets, in fact, contained 5 commandments on one side and 5 commandments on the other. For those of you who, I must say, the word commandment is again really a corruption. This event was not a religious one to create religiosity. This was an event whereby humankind would be restored to the immortal connection, that outer space connection of Adam before his sin. The immortal connection. We no longer would be human beings. This was what was going on. That force, the awesome power of the force of the Lord, was now falling and being restored in the hands of humankind to make use of this force that ultimately would lead to immortality. This is what we're talking about. And so when there were 5 dibrot, I'd rather use the word dibrot, 5 sayings, mamarim. There were 5, meaning because there are basically only 5 sfirot, Keta, Chachma, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. Tiferet consists of 6, and therefore we have 10. And this is not the place for me to discuss that. You can find that in any of the volumes already published by the Center. There were 5, a complete unit of the right column, one side of the tablet, and there were 5, because every force, every energy intelligence consists of 5 or 10 as you wish. And therefore there were 5 and 5. The 5 totality of the right column and the 5 totality of the left column became one unified whole. by virtue of that energy intelligence portrayed and symbolized by avir, air, restriction. Thereby, with this lesson in mind, that restriction would be the only building block of our universe by which we can capture and tap the awesome energy of the Lord, that force. And heaven help us if we did not make use of that restriction, but rather turned ourselves into an animal existence of the body, the internal energy force known as the desire to receive for oneself alone. This is what Shavuot means. This is what it always meant. And when the Israelite completed those 7 weeks, and that's what the literal name of Shavuot means, weeks. Included within the name of Shavuot, you have Sheva, which means 7. When the totality of a vessel came into existence, that vessel that could handle this awesome power, when that became firmly established, when that vessel became mitukan, corrected for the first time since the fall of Adam, the world would know of no distraught, no chaos, no catastrophes, but one unified, structured, ordered whole. Shavuot is also known by other names. Do we need more than one name? It's called Lechem Bikurim, Chag HaBikurim. It is called the holiday, and a word, I can't say I despise anything, I really don't despise anything, but Hag does not mean holiday. It might mean whole day, but not holy day, Holy. Maybe WHOLE, but not holiday, because once you think of holiday, you're thinking of tradition, you're thinking of remembering, you're thinking of heritage, maintaining Judaism as a heritage. Forget it. It was never the intent of the revelation on Mount Sinai. We're talking about awesome power. We're talking about tapping and capturing and maintaining this kind of energy. In the Zohar, volume 1, page 8a, we read that Rabbi Shimon was sitting and studying the Torah during the night when the bride was to be joined to her husband on the night of Shavuot. For we have been taught that all members of the bridal palace, during the night preceding her chuppah, her marriage, are in duty bound to keep her company and to rejoice with her in her final preparations for the great day. On this day, and this night particularly, one should study all branches of the Torah, proceeding from the law, beginning with Genesis, to the prophets, and then from the prophets to the holy writings, and then to the deeper interpretations of scriptures and to the mysteries of wisdom, as all these represent her preparations and her adornments. The bride indeed with her bridesmaids come up and remains with them and rejoice with her throughout the entire night. Unquote. Before I go any further, I don't want you to think that I have forgotten how to make the connection on Lag BaOmer and to tap that awesome power of Shavuot in its potential state. But the reason that I have delayed providing you with the proper channels is because in our understanding of Shavuot, we shall have a total comprehension concerning the night of Lag BaOmer as well. They are one and the same. As I have repeatedly stated, both in my writings and in recordings, that in Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, when it states that Adam knew Eve and she bore Cain, the Zohar questioned the usage of the word knew, and the Zohar makes the startling revelation that to make connections, establish communication with metaphysical forces, and certainly so awesome power as the cosmic intelligence of the force, there is but one channel that we can avail ourselves of and make use of, and that is knowledge of the force, knowledge of cosmic intelligence. We must know. Maybe that's what's been ailing and troubling the world for 2,000 years since the destruction of the Second Temple, in which we read in the Zohar that during the time of the Temple, that edifice merely symbolized the cosmic totality of the all-embracing whole. There was harmony in the world for all mankind. The destruction of the temple was not the cause of chaos and disorder that we experience and for those before us, but rather was the culminating event, the sign, the demonstration of human activity, of man's inhumanity towards fellow man. And so the Holy Temple served no further purpose, because the temple was there to serve as a channel for humankind, for Jew and non-Jew alike. But when humankind began to become obsessed with the desire to receive for oneself alone, he no longer could avail himself of the Holy Temple. He could not make use of the Holy Temple as his connection with the force. And therefore, without a Holy Temple, how do we make contact with this all-embracing unified whole? That force that controls the universe, the force that makes us do things as we do, more times than none, unfortunately, in a robotic consciousness state. Knowing is the answer. You must know before you can make connection. You must know what Shavuot is all about if as stated in the Zohar, that Shavuot represents the marriage between the force and the vessel, the marriage between the Lord and the Shekhinah, the vessel, the Shekhinah, which had been prepared, the bride. The Zohar states, we are the ones who can prepare the wedding. It is incumbent upon us to know the forces that prevail. And therefore, I would like to raise several questions, because the old adage, what comes first, the question or the answer? The answer is the question, because within the question already lies the answer. The answer is there because a question has been raised. Not asking does not provide the answer. So I would like to raise several questions at this time so as to broaden the knowledge and significance of this valuable cosmic event, to understand the cosmic timetable, so as we can have an opportunity to tap that cosmic event, the marriage of vessel and force light. There is two other names that this holiday of Pentecost has come to be known. One is Chag HaAtzeret, which means kind of closed, stop, terminating, and also Chag Bikurim. It is the holiday, holy day, whole day, of bringing of the first fruits. First, the head, the beginning. Why? Furthermore, in the Ari's gates of meditation, as well as in the Zohar just quoted, the Ari clearly states that whoever is up and does not sleep during the night of Shavuot, he is certain to live out the full year until Rosh Hashanah, when all mankind is judged again. He has, in effect, purchased a life insurance policy. In fact, I never could understand why they called it life insurance, because you reap the benefits of life insurance when one dies. I don't know why they call it life insurance. How do you insure your life? Well, the Ari and the Rebbe Shimon in the Zohar provide us with true and real life insurance when they state that it is also the time when the trees are judged. As mankind is judged on Rosh Hashanah, meaning what? Meaning that will the soul be directed for the coming year to maintain its contact with this body and infuse it with the necessary energy to keep it going for another year? Or will, in midstream, or at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year, will the soul be taken away from its habitat, the body, in the physical reality, and returned to its normal place? That is what is meant by judging. Judgment Day. The trees are judged on this day as well. What does that mean? What is the significance of the trees being judged in the month of Sivan, in the month of Gemini? There is one other holiday that also has come to be known by the name of Atzeret, Shmini Atzeret. It is the final day of the Sukkot, the holiday of the tabernacle. It is the final day. And the Bible designates that final day of the Sukkot holiday as Chag Shmini Atzeret, terminating, finished, stop. What does all this mean? Why are there 3 holidays? Well, I guess by this time you have penetrated the cosmic code of the Bible. You know that the moment you hear the number 3, you're talking about 3 separate and distinct energy intelligence sources. 3 energy intelligent frames. And therefore the Zohar provides us with this cosmic intelligence, that within the cosmos there is a timetable when these 3 separate, distinct, yet interconnected and interrelated energy thought intelligences appear in the cosmos. There's a timetable, like your timetable, that provides you with information on what's on in television or in radio. That's what the Bible is all about. And therefore the Zohar states that Passover is the time when there is a pervading of right column thought energy intelligence. That's the time you can tap that kind of energy. If you're lacking the concept of sharing, take advantage of how to prepare your vessel, the matzah and the whole bit that goes along with it. Connect with that energy that makes its appearance, its debut, once a year on the 15th day of the month of Aries. Sukkot, left column. Draw it in. Take it. Use it. You need it. And I might say, if there is anyone listening that feels that they have no lack of energy, then that's true. It's not religiosity that we're talking about. It's tapping energy sources. It's trying to make contact by which I can become a circuit of energy, by which I don't have this dragged out, washed out feeling. I want to feel alive. There it is. You need negative energy. When I say negative, I don't mean it in the sense of evil, Without that negative pole in the bulb, you cannot achieve a circuit. You need the combination of electron, proton, and neutron to form that formidable energy source called atom. Then what is Shavuot? States the Zohar. It is that time in the cosmos, that time when we can't see, observe with our five senses, what's really going on up there? What's happening? But Shavuot will appear year in and year out as a cosmic intelligence and a thought energy intelligence of central column. That's when the timetable decreed that this cosmic energy intelligence prevails. And so the Israelite, in spite of the fact that he was so involved in the desire to receive for oneself alone, despite the fact that uppermost and foremost in his mind was the delicious fish he tasted in Egypt, the great times he experienced in Egypt. But with the assistance of this cosmic energy intelligence called Shavuot, he would be in a position and would have the ability to cope with this awesome circuit of energy that could be his. Why is Ilanot, or trees, judged in this day? Because trees is the vegetable kingdom. The vegetable kingdom, green, the color green, represents, according to the Zohar and the Ari, and more fully discussed in the entrance to the Tree of Life, the color green represents the domination of restriction, the energy, thought, intelligence of saying, stop, hold it, wait a moment. I need everything in this world. I want everything in this world, but wait a minute. Hold back a moment. When you see green, the color green, you're talking about restriction, and you've heard the expression, he sees the color green. You're talking about stop. Don't give in to every desire you've got. For two reasons. One, leave something over. Let the next fellow enjoy some as well. Must you have it all? But secondly, and more importantly, you want to maintain a continuity and flow of energy? You've got to inject that aspect of central column, without which there is only short-circuitedness. So it's a practical thing. It's not a religious idea. The Bible is not religion. It's giving you the practical methods by which you can tap this awesome power that exists, that makes us do things. Things that sometimes we wake up and say, wow, now why did I do something like that? That was pretty stupid. You mean one moment we're smart and the next moment we're stupid? I'm not here to establish the validity of cosmic and astral influences. If you haven't gotten there yet, You're still operating on a level of robotic consciousness. You might think, boy, all of your activity is self-made. But I assure you, if you took a few moments each day to meditate about the free choice, the freedom, free will that you believe is yours, I'm afraid that you will wake up one day and find out that you might have been mistaken all along. Robotic consciousness, astral influences, is what makes most of us move. It is only when we inject the energy, thought, intelligence of restriction, when we think restriction, we are making things move. And so, when we raise the question of why are the trees, vegetation, judged during the month of Sivan, that's the month when thought, energy, intelligence of restriction is pervading this entire universe with its 250 galaxies or universes, whichever. That's the energy that we can take advantage of, because that's the energy that gives life to trees. They breathe in and breathe out. They provide us with the necessary nutrients, air, because they are intrinsically central column. With this information, we now begin to understand why the Ari and Rabbi Shimon can assert with such certainty that if you are up, if you are awake throughout that night, you are assured of life for the next 3 months. The next 3 months until the coming Rosh Hashanah. Because Shavuot, by virtue of the Israelites preparing, correcting that vessel, called the days of the Omer, those 49 aspects of the total vessel, of the whole vessel, by our connecting and by knowing, which is what we've done now, by knowing what it's all about, we are establishing that connection. You recall when we discussed the splitting of the Red Sea. This is quantum. Everything and anything is part of an all cosmic whole. Integrated, interrelated, interconnected parts, yet of all one all-embracing whole. When on Shavuot we have made the connection and have tapped that stop energy. Stop energy, that sounds kind of ridiculous, but that's what it's called. Stop energy. You know what the filament does in the bulb? It stops the flow, and you know what happens? The bulb begins to light up. You've removed the darkness of the room. You've stopped the flow. That building block called paradox has taken over. This is what Shavuot, restriction, is all about, and that's why we call it Chag Atzeret. But to stop the things, because that's the only free will we have in this universe. Randomness, as these scientists would lead us to believe, free universes that can almost lead us to believe that if you kill somebody or you steal, you're not responsible. Because in quantum, maybe the fellow eating rice in China made me murder, made me steal. Because that's quantum. Everything is connected. How can you tell what's right or what's wrong? Everything is so uncertain. Everything looks like one whole mess. But not from a Kabbalistic point of view. While there is quantum, while everything is interrelated, while past, present, and future are all here and now, nevertheless they are very distinct parts. But there is only one cosmic energy that makes things move. There is only one cosmic energy that brings past, present, and future all into one. And that is restriction. Bread was never brought as a sacrifice. And I don't even like that word, but I guess for most of you listening to this tape, that's what you're familiar with. They bought bread. Bread was never permitted to be brought as a sacrifice into the temple. But on Shavuot, oh yes, you could. You could, and you know why? Because there was a marriage here. There was a marriage between Zeir Anpin, which is called the vegetable kingdom, and Malchut, the desire to receive. There's a marriage here. What is that marriage? The desire to receive has been put to a stop. It's got to be a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. That's restriction. That's the sun. That's Zeir Anpin, sharing. That is Shavuot.